You're watching the Newshour Washington DC edition with Arnab Goswami.
It's down to real business now as the attention shifts completely to Washington as America rolled out the red carpet for Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the end of the 75-minute flight from New York to Washington. It knew very well that Modi meant business. As he put it in his 38-minute conversation at the leading think tank in New York, money will meet manpower if both countries come together.
He is in Washington on a presidential invite. But as the leader of 125 crore people, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will have to raise a whole set of thorny issues with Barack Obama. The most recent sticking point being India's veto at WTO, where India blocked a deal on trade facilitation, citing concern on limiting food subsidies.
As I see the past 5 years, things have gone on a slope that would negatively slope from an investment point of view. But now, I mean, everybody's full of hope. But it's only 100 days for Mr. Modi, so we'll see. The pace of change is.
Also on Modi's mind will be US visa restrictions on Indian IT workers that have put Indian IT firms at a distinct disadvantage. The nuclear deal too is stuck in a limbo ever since the United States began protesting against India's liability clause.
We salute India's long history as a leading contributor to United Nations peacekeeping missions. And we welcome India as it prepares to take its seat on the United Nations Security Council.
Even that promise made by Barack Obama on a permanent UNSC seat for India is far from being fulfilled.
Target that we have set ourselves of sitting at the high table of the Security Council as a permanent member is something that is that grows more relevant with each passing year.
But the downturn in diplomatic ties came in December last year, when an Indian diplomat was arrested and subjected to a humiliating strip search. Ever since then, the differences are out in the open. From Crimea to sanctions against Iran to resolution against Sri Lanka, India has taken a stand completely opposite to that of the US.
While India has taken a tough stand on the crisis between Russia and Ukraine, in fact going to the extent of calling the incidents in Ukraine not good and bad for the humanity, many say it is time for India to speak more vehemently on global issues that confront the diplomatic world on the international fora.
After visiting Japan and hosting Xi Jinping, several challenges await Modi as he prepares to engage Barack Obama in what is billed as India's big power push. With Navika, Kumar in Washington, Poonam Burde for Times Now.
In some time, Narendra Modi will be meeting Barack Obama. And everyone, you ask most people, 9 out of 10 will tell you here in Washington that the bedrock of a stronger bilateral relationship has to be a strengthened economic partnership between both countries. Many people talk about defense trade, but there are a whole host of other areas. And Modi's pitch also, it was interesting that even at the Council for Foreign Relations, his pitch entirely was broadly the economic agenda between India and America. Can that be a driver? Has there been too much hype and expectation built into it? Has Modi gone into the specifics deep enough to really invest the investors who matter? Or has there been too much of a repeating of the same points and promise all over again? Keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, America does not work, especially in Washington. Washington does not act on the basis of promise. Washington is generally a place where people like to see the job done. With us today, to my right, is Swaminathan Aiyyar, a senior economist and consulting editor with the Economic Times. Thank you, Swami. Good to see you in Washington.
That's good.
Thank you. And Dr. Alyssa Ayres, she's a senior fellow at the India, Pakistan and South Asia on the Council of Foreign Relations. Dr. Ayres, good to see you again.
Nice to see you too.
Did you enjoy the Madison Square event yesterday?
I certainly did. It blew my mind. It was an incredible gathering.
Yes. Navika Kumar, our political editor, is with us in the studio. She's been tracking Modi throughout. at both these events?
Yes, hectic morning for Narendra Modi, meeting with all those CEOs and giving them
How many did he meet?
11 in the first breakfast meeting that he met.
Separately
and
or together?
11 were together, and after that there were 6 one-on-ones with the bigger guys. So in all, 17 CEOs is what he met in New York. That's even before he's come down to Washington, D.C. And in Washington, D.C. tomorrow, of course, he's at the reception of the US IBC, where there are going to be a lot more CEOs and a closed-door meeting. And he's even addressing those CEOs tomorrow in Washington, D.C. So he is wooing them. But does he have the real infrastructure to actually offer to them at this moment, or is it just atmospherics? That's the matter of debate.
You know, someone told me this, that there has been so much sizzle that now we really want a steak. So I thought that was very well put. Typical American style, lot of sizzle. Where's the steak? Caffey Norman is a partner with Squire, Patton, Boggs. He's a lawyer. Thank you very much, Caffey. Since you're close to me, I'll shake your hand. And Dr. Nandini Tandon, she's an entrepreneur and venture capitalist at Silicon Valley. Thank you very much, Dr.
Pleasure
Tandon.
being here. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Tandon, where should he start? What do you think is going to be the bedrock of the talks which on the economic agenda? Do you think there is too much sizzle, too little steak, too much razzmatazz, too much glamour, but no specifics yet?
You know, anytime you're launching any partnership, sizzle doesn't hurt.
Sizzle doesn't hurt?
No, I don't think sizzle hurt. I think it's important to take the time to woo each other, to have that trust building, to have some momentum in the partnership. So I think sizzle is good. So far, you do have the steak at the end.
Yeah.
But if you only have sizzle, that's not positive. But I think sizzle is important right now, because for the longest time, there has been not much going on between US and India that we can talk about. I think Alyssa and I were talking earlier, there has been in the backdrop, there's been a lot of attempts that have been happening, and a lot of focus has been happening to make things, to take them forward, but not anything concrete that we can say in the last few years that we can report back. So I think now there's a new relationship coming together. It's important for them to look each other in the eye, to have trust.
Right.
And also, I think from an American citizen's perspective, it's very important that this relationship start on the note of what we can do for each other, what we can do with each other, and what we can do not only for the oldest and the largest democracy, but given the fact that the two democracies are so powerful.
That's all right. That's all general talk. Let's get very specific. So, what can America give us vis-a-vis outsourcing? Vis-a-vis, for example, Mr. Norman, on the visa issues, vis-a-vis intellectual property rights, especially in the pharmaceutical industry. When will Modi speak about them in public? Because for every concession that we actually give, we must also be seeking something. Modi hasn't been speaking too many specifics.
Well, Washington, as everyone knows, the relations are not good between the parties. There's lots of partisanship, but there are things that this administration can do and should do. The H-1B visa problem that you alluded to is a problem of administrative, perhaps I don't want to say ineptitude, but it's certainly the denial, the increased rate of denial in H-1B visas is something that this administration needs to sort through. The trade in software with India is a very significant part of our economy, and you can't have this kind of imbalance and let it go unaddressed. That's just one example.
Yeah, I take your point. But Swami, now, what really is going on? You've been watching things very, very closely from Washington and Delhi. What are you making of this?
5-6 years ago, there was this idea of a great strategic partnership. Strategic partnerships are not about visa problems or about a little FDI. We were supposed to be, after having been the world's biggest beggar for many decades, suddenly we became a potential superpower because we were growing at 9% for almost a decade. Suddenly you became somebody who has a strategic value, possibly the only counter to China in the whole of Asia, a great economic. So that's why we were taken very seriously by Bush, who gave you the nuclear deal, by Obama, who promised you a seat in the UN Security Council. If we can go back to that 9-10% growth, we will then have strategic relevance. If you're back to 4.5% and suddenly you say, with Modi I'm going to do 5.5% this year. I mean, if that is the level of the thing, I'm sorry, you are not of strategic value. So the strategic partnership has to be, if India gets its act together and can show once again that...
Hasn't Modi opened up FDI in so many key sectors apart from multi-brand retail?
This is small little details.
So then what is the big story? If everything is a small detail, what's the big story?
The big story, I'm afraid, is that when Indians are not investing in India, why will foreigners? I keep tracking capital goods orders in India, construction orders. There is no boom in capital goods orders in India. There is no boom in construction. If there is no Indian investment boom, if the conditions such as they are not energizing Indian businessmen, the idea that foreigners will...
You're talking of a pre-May situation or a post-May situation?
I have tracked the situation. No, they are available now for May, June, July, even August. There are some data. There is there is an improvement. So from 4.5% growth, you're going to go to 5.5%. That much I give you. And that is more or less the consensus now. But I'm talking about a boom. The consensus right now is that under Modi we'll go to 5.5%, and then maybe next year we go to 6.5%. This is nowhere near the kind of rock star, superpower status we were talking about of a country with strategic value. Most of the Fortune 500 guys were dying to come into India, I would say, between 2003 and 2008. So you create that atmosphere where you are relevant, and there's a partnership. But if it is a question of our constantly saying, what more are you going to give me? The question is, what does India have to offer as a strategic partner? Frankly,
I think India has a lot. I think India has a lot.
Strategically, you need to be successful.
Yes, India has a lot. But India has $100 billion to spend, for example, in defense trade. And that's a huge potential. I mean, you ask any American here today, we were talking to Professor Stephen Cohen, who was here on the panel some time back, and he said that we really want to know what how you're going to take that forward. America made $9 or $10 billion and became the biggest defense supplier to India. They're slurping at the thought of doing $50 billion worth if they can get the majority share of defense business with India over the next decade. That's strategic.
We've achieved a certain level. It is nowhere near the kind of growth prospect. We are now 1/5 the size of China in terms of GDP. Please become at least half that, are you going to become half that size, 2/3 that size? All I can say is there was a dynamism for almost a decade. You've gone downhill.
The point is that aren't you being too cynical? Let's get Navika into the mix that, if you feel... okay, before I go to Navika, Dr. Ayres, you've been hearing this conversation. What do you make of it?
I think there's a couple ways to look at this question. India is such a complex place. There's always more than one way to look at an issue. Yeah. If you look at the U.S.-India relationship and the way it's been transformed, let's say, from a decade ago till now, there's been a complete transformation of ties. Our trade relationship has vastly increased over what it was 10 years ago. Could we do more together? Could we do better on that count? I think the answer to that is yes. And I think both sides think that we could be doing better together with each other. So the question is, how do we overcome some of the hurdles that have emerged on both sides? Both sides have complaints. You've alluded to some of them already. There are also some areas, just to make sure we're all on the same page here, there are some areas, here I'm speaking specifically about the trade and economic relationship, there are some areas that for whatever reason don't get highlighted so much, and those are going very well. I've written a bit about this. Clean energy, that's an area where we've had very good partnership between India and the United States. A very good clean energy research consortium has been put in place, jointly funded by both governments with a private sector challenge grant. Doing great things together. That can do more. Clearly, it's a priority for the new Prime Minister who wants to see India doing more on clean energy to leapfrog into clean fuels. We've got a great science and technology relationship between the United States and India. Again, doesn't always make kind of the headlines. I don't know, maybe it's not exciting because it is going well, but that's a kind of bedrock of a high-tech relationship, and that's all very positive.
Yeah, but the potential is there, Swami. Potential is always based upon where you stand right now. So, if you look at it, what is the total investment from US to India? In the last few years, it is less than that from Singapore. It is less than that from the United Kingdom. It is less than that even from the Netherlands. by the way, Swami, and it is less than that even from the United Arab Emirates.
You're making the same point I'm making.
No, so no. I'm making the point. I'm making the point that the US has not been a great investor in the past decade and a half in the Indian market. And the Indian market has been seen as lucrative by many other countries, maybe because the bilateral relationship has not been worked on. Navika wanted to respond, and please feel free.
I would like to jump in afterwards.
By the way, it's an open discussion, so please, I'm not going to keep tossing on both sides, but Navika, yes.
Well, I wouldn't share the pessimism of Swami because he's talking about a recovery. A recovery would take time, that much you have to grant. It's been 120 days for Narendra Modi, so you can't expect Narendra Modi to have a magic wand. There has been slack in the Indian economy. Indian economy has gone through that over the last 3 or 4 years. It's not going to be magic, really, Swami, that suddenly from 4.5 we'd get on to 8.5 and 9. You have to go through the steps. So first step would be 5.5 and then the 6.5 and then there onwards. But the point really is what India needs to engage with America on is the issue of protectionism. On one hand, America is acting protectionist when it comes to outsourcing, when it comes to software export from India. On the other hand, when India takes a stand on protectionism in WTO about subsidies and farm subsidies and these issues, the Americans, pile on onto India. So it is these issues which really need to be resolved. And really, the starting off point for Narendra Modi today was to actually show that we are back in business. There may have been bad events in India as far as retrospective taxation is concerned or pending legislation.
So, there is no magic wand.
But the intent is there now to come back.
No, there is no magic wand. I think there were views from this side of the table. Right. I mean, there is no magic wand that Modi can wave in 4 months that he's been in power. But you won't see a sudden spike or anything like that. But even Swami would agree the situation in the last 4 months has been significantly better than what we've seen in the last 5 years. And I was just thinking that perhaps one of the reasons for America's flagging off on investment probably because it is itself sort of suffering. It has not yet got out of the 2008-2009. The American economy is just beginning to bounce back from the effects of the recession.
May I jump in?
Yeah,
so
please
I think
go
from
ahead.
a venture capitalist perspective, I also like to share A, from a venture capitalist perspective and B, from the Silicon Valley's perspective. Yeah. From a venture capitalist perspective, when you say that how come more investments have not gone into India, right? Yeah. The scaffolding has to be such that we feel welcome to come in. It's very important. The red tape is there, things don't move, the governance is not strong, the list goes on. So I think since this government is very serious about attracting foreign direct investments, they're very serious about getting more investments coming into India, they have to prove to the world that all the red tape is gone, not through lip service, but we genuinely should be able to click away and start working. That's one thing. Secondly, the follow-through has to be there. Just because somebody came and made an announcement that this is going to work, I think if you don't have depth in the team, and if you don't have follow-through from the team, then I think it's not going to work.
I agree with you on that.
That's the concern.
But at the same time, which is going to be the starting point, Mr. Norman, as far as India is concerned? He's been making the point at Madison Square at the CFR that I'm going to be cutting down on the red tape. I'm going to get the ease of business, doing business in India. I'm going to make it far more convenient. And I think many people feel, and Swami has a point there, that many people feel it is fairly unfortunate because as the trend goes, a bulk of Indian big investors are more interested in pumping in their money into the United States through foreign direct investment. What Modi is trying to do is try and reverse that trend by wooing Americans to invest in India through this Make in India campaign and other campaigns. What in your view are the things that he's going to have to do as a follow-through?
It's good that you've got the man in place who is from the right region. He's a Gujarati, he's a businessman, he knows how to make things work. But if you want people to invest in India, clearly the system has to be there, the infrastructure has to be there. There's no way to force Americans or anyone else to invest there.
And in terms of laws and legislation, in your view?
The laws, in many cases, need to be revised. There's a lot of red tape in India. There's a lot here, but there's a lot more in India.
Yeah, so he's yes, Swami.
The Doing Business series how difficult it is in India. One of the worst countries for starting business. I think we were 135th out of to getting a construction permit. I think we were, the 5th worst in the whole world.
So you don't believe Modi can deliver on his promise where he says, I'll make it single window clearance?
Many of these are state government level. That's the point I'm making.
Right.
Getting a construction permit, Modi might want to give it. He can't give it. If you want to have a quick resolution of bankruptcy, that's a court issue.
No, but Mr. Swami, you maintained in the past that economic times are not set by governments, prime minister or presidents. They are set by businessmen and on-ground realities on both sides. Now, I want to understand from you, since you are being fairly cynical, how much of a role can Narendra Modi, in your view, play in fostering people-to-people business relations between India and the US? How much does a commitment, for example, Swami, on paper translate into an on-ground investment? Or do you think that a positive sentiment, do you feel that, what are people talking about today? Positive sentiment. Do you believe that positive sentiment and the posturing of Narendra Modi, the Make in India campaign, is completely irrelevant to the realities on the ground? No, so what is your point, basically? Are you saying India is a hopeless case? Modi will make no difference, economy will not grow? What is your take on it?
He has already made a difference from 4.5 to 5.5 or 6.5.
Yes, so why aren't you more optimistic of it going further than that?
Okay. Because it is not within the power of a Prime Minister to stop all the blockages that we are getting at the state government level and with the judicial interventions that we are getting. The third one is the ability of various NGOs. A series of mining projects of all kinds are coming to a halt. So there are a number of things that a Prime Minister cannot just overdo. I regret to say that in the peak growth period, all environmental clearances were more or less given on payment of a bribe. Everything went very smoothly. Those days are over. Between the NGO agitations, PILs going to the courts, the corruption issues, the way you just got permissions in the old days are gone. It is very necessary for us to get away from that particular regime to somewhere where legal activity is smoothly and quickly done. I mean, there are so many injunctions against illegal sand mining in India to the point where there is no legal production. Only the sand mafia is saving the construction industry. What a position to be in. So why can't we legally facilitate production? That's what we have to focus on. We have got into a problem, as I said, the central government has liberalized lots of things, the industrial license, import license, foreign exchange. Many of these things have been liberalized in New Delhi. But at the state government level, judicial level, NGO level, a series of blockages have come up. Equally, there are a series of new laws based on environment, forest, tribal, land acquisition. These four things have slowed everything down. Cutting through this is Modi's job.
See, he
has to take the chief ministers with him.
No, you have to be realistic also. Yes. You can't say that anything to do with the environment is bad. You are living. Today we are doing this program in the United States of America. And let me tell you, Swami, environmental activism is born and bred and spawned and encouraged by the United States of America. So it will be a little ironical, for us to criticize the very things in America, in India, which America says it upholds so dear to its heart. And tomorrow one could reverse that argument to say that human rights is a terrible thing, whereas the script of human rights used for tactical diplomatic reasons was also written in America.
I'm an environmentalist. I say that you just said that polluters in jail. The idea that I block all new projects, but I don't do anything about the existing polluters, that is the outrageous state of affairs.